our next panelist that we have here, who is Wes Trammell. Now, Wes and I used to work together when I went to Calvin. I was just a student employee, but I was extremely grateful with the conversations that we shared, and he is going to share his story with you today.
Thanks, Courtney. Thanks for having me on here. It's really an honor. So Wes Trammell. I work at National Heritage Academies. I work in HR, recruiting teachers. I also actually run a business too, called The Chosen Ones Grand Rapids, where I promote young athletes from the Grand Rapids area. So I have a lot of fun doing that. A little backstory on me. So I've spent most of my life in predominantly white spaces, starting growing up in Jenison. So I'm a Jenison High School grad. So that brought a variety of challenges and issues for me and my family, especially my sister. I have an older sister that went through the school system before we did. So she had a different kind of experience than me and my brother and my younger sister. So me, my brother, and my younger sister, we were actually athletes. So I think that's why we had a different experience than my sister, my older sister had. So I was a basketball player, and basketball really helped me make friends, if that makes sense. As a lot of people that play sports, they instantly connect with their teammates, instantly connect with people that they compete against. So I really think that, being, I guess, I was called, a standout, on the basketball court. My name was in the paper and all that. All the accolades, I guess. But so I felt like my experience, I was kind of, I don't want to say desensitized, but I don't know, treated differently than a lot of Black kids at my school. Often I would see how the Black kids at my school were treated. The kids that didn't play sports, or the kids that weren't plugged in to different extracurricular activities. I saw how they were, ignored, or I saw how they were made disappointing to see. A lot of the Black kids that came to my school actually basically will come to Jenison for a couple weeks or a semester and transfer like right away. I would see that like every single year. So I think that was like the average really life of a young Black kid at a school like Jenison. But so growing up too with friends, I had a lot of good friends, a lot of good people in my life. I did have a lot of experiences, going to people's houses for the first time. I dreaded that because I was nervous of how I would be received by a family or by their parents. Oftentimes I would go to a friend's house for the first time, and I would be ignored or wouldn't even be acknowledged. And until somebody said my name, they said Wes or Wes Trammell or something like that, then a light would go on. This has happened numerous times. A light would go on, and it would register to them like, oh, this is Wes Trammell, the basketball player. And then they would talk to me. So I'm like, okay, 5 minutes ago, you weren't even interested in me, but now you know who I am. Now you're interested in learning more about me or asking all these questions. So I dealt with that a lot growing up. And of course, dealing with the microaggressions. I think CC kind of touched on that a little bit. But the one I hear the most is, still to this day, is "you don't sound Black" by the way I talk. My question is to that, it's like, what am I supposed to sound like? But I've heard that probably since I was probably 10 years old, is that you don't sound Black. Another one that I've heard was Black people are crazy, or Black people are so loud or aggressive, but not you, Wes. You're different though. Like you're not like them. Um, and comments like that when I was younger, growing up, I kind of let it go off my, just let it go. Um, Looking back on it, I finally learned that it's not okay. You know, working at Calvin College, I came across a couple leaders. One of them, Michelle Wood Page, who actually taught me about microaggressions. When I learned about that, it helped me reflect back on, you know, the days, you know, growing up in my community, that these phrases are ignorant, and I'm pretty sure a lot of them aren't, um, you know, weren't malicious. It's just that it's just out of ignorance, if you know what I mean. So um, I really honestly think that my life would have been different if I wasn't an athlete. And um, for instance, my sister, so she's the one that really dealt with um, being called the N-word. She's the one that dealt with a lot of the racism, a lot of the bigotry, a lot of um, basically just being shut out just because of the color of her skin. And yeah, I respect her and love her for dealing with that. I feel like she took that on herself for us. And I will always, you know, love her for that and respect her for just dealing with that the way that she did. You know, she could have quit, she could have gone to another school, she could have transferred, but she graduated all 4 years at Jenison. So I guess my call to action, you know, for my white friends, um, for white people in general, you know, I've been seeing on Facebook a lot people, you know, saying that, hey, we're all on the same team, or hey, I love everybody, or why can't we all just get along? You know, if we're all on the same team, if we're truly all on the same team, um, speaking from a former athlete, teammates just don't sit and watch their teammates struggle. You know, I never sat and watched my teammate struggle. I didn't just sit there and just say, "Oh, he'll be okay." I intervened. I fought for my teammate. So I'm asking white Americans to fight for us, fight for your team, learn from us, ask us if we're okay, because overall, we're not doing okay. So
Thank you. Thank you again so much for sharing with us, Wes. I feel like you hit on a lot of good things, and that desensitized was a really powerful word that you said there. So a question that I would like to ask is, we work together at Calvin, which is a predominantly white institution. So talk to a little bit about how, whether you felt supported or not, as a Black man working at a predominantly white institution.
yeah, I would say I did feel supported by the other people of color that worked at Calvin. We did have a really a really tight community. You know, right, probably my first week when I worked there, you know, I was grabbed by you know, my brother Kyrie, who introduced me to the other people of color that worked there, and we met a couple times a month, just going to lunch and stuff like that. And then my supervisor, or my boss, Tarita Johnson, she definitely was a proponent of me feeling like I was heard there. But I feel like overall, you know, as I met with students like you, Courtney, and just heard your opinions, that's where my heart broke the most. Because overall, I felt like the students of color weren't supported as much as they should have been. And that resulted of a lot of students that, you know, I became close with, transferred to other schools and things like that. And it almost got to a point, to be totally honest, I would ask the students like what made you come here? Why are you here? Type thing. Um, I didn't want to talk bad about Calvin. I just honestly wanted to know. So from the student standpoint, I felt like that's where my heart broke the most because overall, students just felt like Black students and brown students just felt like they were drowning um, at the university overall. So,
Wes, I'm going to follow up on the question that Courtney asked. It looks like somebody on Facebook might have asked this, and they said, "Thanks for sharing. How would you handle hearing you don't sound Black now, or if maybe people who are not of color hear somebody speak that, or you're acting Black or not acting Black? What is the appropriate response to that?"
Yeah, I would, go a little deeper than what I said before. I would ask the question, how am I supposed to sound? I wouldn't. My natural reaction would be to kind of go back at the person or get upset and potentially start like an argument. But I feel like responding with a question would open up dialogue. So asking that question, how am I supposed to sound? And then reacting to that answer. But in the fact that I feel like being educated in Black is like a surprise to people. And I feel like that's sad, and that has to go away. So, but I'll definitely respond with a question in hopes of having some type of dialogue where we both learn from each other.
But last question here, Wes, is this is from an HR professional, and she asked, as an HR professional, what do you believe is the best thing that we can do now for our employees to address Black Lives Matter?
Definitely. I think having things like this, I know my team is watching right now. So, sending teams to events like this, events where, people will learn more about Black Lives Matter, more about Black history. I think creating spaces as well within the workplace where people of color can share their stories, not just with other people of color, but share their stories with, with the white coworkers as well. So just putting each other in situations where they can learn and educate themselves or be educated. I think that would be a great start. So if you're on Netflix, I would check out the documentary called LA 92. So it covers the story of Rodney King. If you're familiar with that case, it goes through that case pretty in depth, and then the riots afterwards, and how the city was turned upside down and split racially. So yeah, that documentary really made me really upset, and I hope it makes you upset as well if you check it out. It's really good though, really well put together. So LA 92 on Netflix.